Hi there, my name is Daniel, and in this video we're going to get started with shadcN_UI. We're going to learn what it is and how to use it. In very quick steps, you're going to start first by creating our project. I've already created a folder here in the desktop. You can do the same. Therefore, I'm just going to drag and drop inside the Visual Studio Code. And then I'm going to open the terminal, and I'm going to install Next.js because we need to use Next.js. We'll be using Next.js in this project to test out shadcn and also to learn shadcn. In the terminal, you can just paste npx create next -app at latest and then space and dot. This dot ensures that you're creating the project inside the folder that you've just dropped in VS Code. Then press enter. Then just accept everything as default. Okay, no. Okay, the project is created successfully, and these are the choices I've made. It's just by default. I'm using TypeScript, not JavaScript. Before we continue, let us just clean our project, and then we're going to start our server and introduce shadcNUI. So you will come here inside the app folder here, and then inside page.tsx, and then collapse this div. You can collapse it at this point, and then just delete it. And we're going to create another div, and this time the div is for, we're going to give the name. Inside the div, we're just going to have a h1, and that says shadcNUI basics. If you've done that, great job. Then you can just delete this, and that is the only change that we need. Okay, you can just come here, but you can just style this title a bit and just give it a class name, text -green and font bold. Great. You can come here inside the terminal, and then you can just type npm run dev so that you can have our server running. Then you can press enter. Great job. Now that you have your server running on localhost 3000, let us just dive in to shadcNUI. You can move inside your browser, and then you can just search for shadcNUI. Then you can just click on it. Going to click on the main page. shadcNUI is made on top of Radix, and it helps us create beautiful components. For example, on the home page, you can see this is the power of shadcNUI. You can create all of this, and you can also come here inside the color here, and then you can select a different color, or we can see the colors that are supported. By default, shadcNUI is made using TypeScript and Tailwind CSS. Therefore, that's why you have all these colors that are written in Tailwind CSS. So you can use these Tailwind CSS colors inside your project, but you're going to see how to use this in a moment. Let us just go back to themes, and then you can customize. Click on customize here, and you can see the colors. For example, if I click green, it's possible we can style our components with a green color. You can also try with a different color so that you can have just a different feel. For example, blue, and you can see how it looks. Great. Now let us go directly to the docs and have a look and see what frameworks are supported. Okay, we have a definition here. So we are told that it is not a component library. It's just a collection of reusable components that you can just copy paste. That is the importance of it, or it's how easy it is. You can just copy paste and the code is given. Another thing we can look at is installation, or we can look at the frameworks that are supported using shadcNUI. For instance, we have all these frameworks: Next.js, Vite, Remix, Astro, and many others. So all these are React frameworks. And another thing, as I have told you earlier, is that shadcNUI is made using TypeScript. That's why they recommend that you use TypeScript, and that's why I've used the same. But using TypeScript does not mean that you cannot use it with JavaScript, because TypeScript and JavaScript are brothers and sisters. Therefore, you can also use JavaScript. But for you to use JavaScript, you have to configure your components.json. For instance, you just have to put in the TSX section false. But you do not have to do all these configuration because we are just using TypeScript as recommended. So for us, we'll just go to installation directly. Okay, you can move down here, and since the framework that we are using is Next.js, we can just click here on Next.js. Great. And this is how we can create our project. Nice. We can just come here and then select npm. We are using npm, and for us to install shadcn, this is the command that we need to run. If I'm just going to copy this command and then go back inside my VS Code and then just paste inside the terminal. And then you can press enter and wait for it to install. You can press enter again. And then you can just put everything as default. Okay, I'm going to choose gray, and then you can. So are we using CSS for theming? You can just say yes. Okay, we are running under a problem here. It tells us since we are using the latest version of React, which is React 19, we need to solve a problem here. Some variables have been changed, and therefore we can just press enter. We can use force to ensure that they're installed correctly. Therefore, you can just press enter. So don't worry when you see that message. Just press enter because it is addressed inside the documentation. If we go back inside the documentation and then come here, Next.js plus React version 19. Okay, whenever we create using React 19, we'll have that error. So we have the same error that you've come across. We have two solutions. We can either use React version 18, we can downgrade, or we can use force. And this is what I've just done over the command line. But you don't have to worry about this. Just press enter when you see legacy force, and automatically is going to ensure that everything is installed correctly. Let us go back to our project. Okay, great. You have already installed shadcn. One beautiful thing with shadcn is that you only install whatever you need. For instance, if I need a button, I'm not going to ship everything from shadcn. I'm just going to install a button. And that is the beauty of it. Okay, let's go and see how to use our first component. But before we use our first component, let us just go back to our browser and see whether everything is running correctly. We should see this shadcNUI basic. Okay, you can come in your browser and just search for localhost 3000, since that is the same as the one that we have been given here. When we check our browser, you can see we have shadcn basics, but I have put this heading as color green. Let us see what's wrong with it. Okay, we need to provide a value here for the intensity. So I can just put a value of, let's say, you can see we have suggestion here. So it can be 50. The higher you go, the more intense the color becomes. Okay, let me just select 700. And let us go back to our browser and see. Great, we have shadcNUI basics. Let us first import our first component. We'll go back to our components just inside the shadcNUI. Then inside the components, we want to go to the button. So you can move up and down, and then you can check for the button. And here is our button. So I'm going to select the button, and then we're going to see how to use it. Okay, this is the button. We have an example here, and we also have a code example here and how to use it. Okay, let us go back and look at it. So how do we install this? So as I've told you, we just need to install whatever we want to use. So we'll just type this npm shadcn add button. Great, and let us just do that. I'm going to copy this and then go back to my Visual Studio Code. Inside here, I'm just going to copy paste and then press enter. Okay, we have to use force just as I had explained, since we're using React 19. Okay, and we are done. One thing you can notice is that inside these components here, we did not have anything, but it has already created a folder inside the components named UI, and inside UI we have a button. It has already, whenever you install that, it has already provided all the code for us. Okay, and we can see what these buttons looks like. The button has the following variants. For example, default, it has this color, and if you put it destructive, it has this color, and it also has sizes large, small, and whatever. Okay, let us look in action. This is just a big piece of code that you did not write. It has come as part of it. Let us go back to our home page, and then we just need to call button and see what happens. Okay, so I'll just call button with capital. Okay, instead of calling button like this, let us just go ahead and follow the documentation. You can go back to our website and see the next step. So how do we use it? We're going to import button from components/UI, the folder that I've shown you, and then inside you're going to have button. So I'm going to just copy this inside our home page. Then you can paste it on top level here. And then let us look at the next step. Then we can call button. If I'm just going to call button like this, I'm going to copy this code here, and then I'm going to paste it here inside. So we have button and we have a variant, which is outline. Okay, first let us see what it looks like. We can go back to our browser. Great, this is the button that we have imported. Let us just look the size that or whatever it has, what are variants and so forth. If I'll just go back inside here, I'm going to enlarge this code so that it can become more visible. I hope it's visible enough on your side. I'm going to drop this one down here. Okay, let me adjust the size again. I hope it's bigger enough. We have just called button and we've provided the variant as outline. Great. Let us go back to here inside the components. We are using AppRouter, and it has a default alias for art. So wherever you are referring to any folder outside here or inside your project, outside here, this level, we have to start with art, because art is the same as // But let us just go back inside our components. If I go back here inside the components, and you can see the variants. Okay, we have the variant, and inside it we have the outline. So outline, we have provided a property of variant and then outline. So what does outline mean? It means these properties. These are Tailwind CSS properties, but you can change it. So how many variants do we have? We have a variant of outline, the one that you've been given as an example. We also have another variant for destructive, and we have another variant for secondary. Okay, let us test this out. We also have another variant for ghost. Let us just go back, and then we can test and see the difference. Okay, then you can just put here ghost and see. Then open our browser, then refresh. Okay, you can see there's a change. We do not have the outline that we had. Let's go back again and try another variant. This time I'm going to give a variant of destructive. Great, and you can just check, and you can see the color has changed. So variance is nothing big, but just the Tailwind CSS definition of it, and it works so beautifully with Tailwind that even the documentation itself tells you to use Tailwind CSS and TypeScript, but you're not confined. You can also use with CSS, and you can use with JavaScript, but I think it's just best when you follow what documentation says. Okay, let us go back and see what else can we test for. So we can also test for, let us test for this link and see the color. Okay, just come here inside the variant. I'm going to change this one to link. Okay, then let us see in our browser, and this is it. It has an underline. So with shadcn, it just makes it super easy. Instead of you typing all this CSS, you can just change the variant. Great. I have shown you how to play with the colors and the variants. What about the size? If we go back inside our button, we can see we also have the size. Size can be, it has a size property which can be default, small, large, or an icon. Let us test this. So you can just come here. After this variant, you can type size. And then inside it, we can actually, we can select, for example, let me just select large. Then go back inside the browser and see. So this button is the size has changed. Let us go back and change to, let's say, small. This library is super easy. Okay, we have the size has decreased. Let us go back and change the variant. Let us see what other variants do we have. You can just go back inside the buttons. We have icon. Let us change and make use an icon size. So I'll just type icon. Okay. Okay, and we can see that. So we have different different variants and different sizes. What other property do we have? Okay, we do not have any other property. So for our button, you have the colors and the sizes. So these are variants, but we have the respective variant, which can be either destructive, outline, secondary, or ghost. With that, I hope you've understood how to use shadcn and how you can implement it in your own button in your project. Let us go to another example, and so that you can at least master the use of shadcNUI. But I hope you have seen how easy it is. The next component that you're going to look at is the label. It's impossible for you to write a project without using a label. Just go back to the documentation, and then you can select label here, and you can look at the installation. So shadcn is so easy that they have provided everything for you. You do not have even to scratch your head. You just copy everything. The most important thing is for you to understand. Okay, so let us just add the label. You copy the command, then go back to your terminal. This is my terminal on the right side. The other side is my server running, or my project running. And then you just type npx shadcn at latest add label. Great. While it installs, let us look at the next step. Okay, after installing it, we just need to import it. Oh, this is sweet. Just import it, and then we're going to call it. Let's check if it has finished installing. Legacy pips, I've told it because of React 19, but if you're using React version 18 or a lower version than that, you're not going to have these errors. It has installed correctly. Let us go back to our browser after installation. You can just go back in our main page. I'm going to copy this, and then inside our main page, you can paste it here. Great. Then you can just come here. The next part is the usage, which is here. And just copy this, and then we can just use it inside our div. Let me have it below the button. Great. Now we've just called label. We've just called the label component, and we can check if it is there. Okay, great. We can refresh our server. Great. And we have, this is your email address. You can enter your email address. So this is the label part. Maybe I should delete this button so that it can become more clear. Okay, just come here, and I'm going to delete this button. One thing you will notice, okay, let me also delete this button, the import of the button. One thing you're going to notice is that inside the components, we have a label.tsx. It's already added. Whenever you're installing, it's creating this file, label.tsx. We did not write this code, or I did not write this code, but you can just check it. It's simple. Okay, we can look at it, and it's just exporting a label with some props. And I think that is so simple to use. And okay, and also the library itself, it says, when you look at the documentation, you can just, let us go back in the introduction. You are allowed to do what? To copy and paste. So do not be surprised I'm just copy pasting. It's just because the documentation itself tells you you can copy paste, and that is the easiest way. It's making work easy. can just copy paste and learn whatever you want. The most important thing is just know how to use it, and it's going to shorten your development time. We can also look at another thing. What about the calendar? Let's say you have a program that people have to choose, or they have to select their age and so forth. So we have a lot of components. If you look here, a lot. We have the hover, label, menu bar, pagination, popover. But let us just have another look at this calendar. And the steps are provided as always. We just add whatever we want to use. In this case, it's the calendar. Therefore, you can just copy this, and then inside the terminal, you can paste the command. After installing the calendar, we can just go back and see the usage. Okay, we need to import it wherever you want to use it. We want to use it in our home page. Therefore, I'm just going to copy this, then go back in my home page, and then I'm going to import this here. I can just import it here. Let me delete the label because we no longer need the label. Okay. Then you can check the next step. How do we use it? And we have been provided. This is the example. We have the date and the set date function. So you can just copy this code, and then let us implement it in our code, in our main page. Okay, we cannot copy it directly. Let us just go back and have another look. We see that the calendar is called inside the return function. Therefore, we need to just copy this part, or rather, we can just copy this part here first, and then above the return function, you can paste it just above the return function here. Great. And then you can go back, and then you can copy the rest of the part. Therefore, just interested with the calendar part. I'm just going to copy this as the calendar, and then I'm going to paste it inside the return function. Okay. Okay, we need this, but one thing you need to do is whenever you're using useState, you have to declare your function as useClient. Therefore, ensure at the top you have this as useClient. Alternatively, we need also to import React and useState from useState. Okay, that is the only change that you need to make. And then we can come here inside our browser and we can check, and we have a calendar. So this is how you can call functions using not functions or components using shadcN/UI. And then we can also see that the calendar is added inside our UI button. So if you want to learn more about the calendar, you can just come here and you can see all the properties that it has, and you can change the properties accordingly, just as I had explained using the button. You can look at the variants, if it has variants, the class names, and so forth. Okay, one thing you notice is that we have this CN. What does CN do? So CN helps us to avoid conflicting CSS declaration. For example, if you have defined two colors for the same part, it's going to use only one color. Instead of throwing an error, it's just going to use one color. We can also check another example still in the shadcN/UI. You can just click here, then you can come here. Another component we can look at is the text area. So you can click on text area, and this is how we just use shadcN/UI. It's very simple. They have simplified everything for us as developers so that we can make our code quicker and also make more money. So if you're able to develop something quicker, you can get more money. Okay, let us see here how to install, and it's just the same. npx add shadcn at latest. So you add whatever you want, and then you can come inside your terminal, and then you can install it. Great. After installing it, we just need to import it where we want to use it. Just want to still use it inside my home page. Therefore, I'm going to import it just like this. I can call it import and just say import text area. And we're importing it from @components. So it's @components /components /UI the same folder, we have components, then UI, then text area. Great. We have imported it correctly. And just after importing it, you can just call it inside your code. So I'm just going to call it just below the calendar. So I'll just call text area, the one that we have imported. Great. And you can just check our code and see if it has executed the same. And just refresh and see. Great. And we have our text area. I have zoomed out, but you can decrease the size so that you can see it. Now this is the text area, the one below the calendar. And it works perfectly. You can style it. You can provide styling it using the variants, or you can also have a quick look at how it is structured. Great job. Let us look also at another component which is mostly used. So I'll go back inside the text area, and we can have another look at one more component, or maybe more other components. The next component that you can look at is the hover card. And how does it work? For example, you can click here and you can see we have some hover information. Let me just click. We have, it's a React framework. When you hover around it, you get some information. Okay, let us see how we install. Just like all the other components, you install what we need. What do we need to install? It's actually just a hover card. So you can copy this, then go inside your terminal, and then you can install. Right click and then press enter. Then you can go back to our documentation, and we can look at the next steps. So how do we use the hover card? We first need to import the hover card, its content, and its trigger. So I think it is self-explanatory. So the card itself, the content, and its trigger. Okay, great. Now, what is the trigger? The trigger will be the name hover. So you can change this hover to a name that you want. For example, you can change it to learn more. Great. And then when you click learn more, then you can just see the contents of learn more. And then the content, this is the content of the card. Let's go back. It has installed correctly, and you can see inside our components, we have hover card here. Okay, I'll just go back inside page.tsx. Then I'm going to delete everything here because we no longer need this. So I'll just come here and delete. I'll delete this and also delete the text area. I'm just doing some cleanups. I have done the cleanups and I'm only left with this h1 tag. Great. Let us see the next steps. Okay, for the sake of saving time, we've been given the imports. Therefore, we're just going to copy these imports. Then you're going to import them at the top of our file. We're just going to import it here. And then the next thing you can see we have, this is how we call it. So I'm going to copy this, and then inside the div, can just paste it here. Now I'm going to change, instead of hover, I'm going to change it to something that makes sense more to us. I can just say learn more. Okay, and we can just leave this as it is. And then I'm going to save. Then you can go back to our browser and see. Okay, let me zoom out so that it can become more clear. Now we have this learn more here. And when I move around learn more, we should be able to see the drop down. Great. So when we move around learn more, we are having this message. So this the card or the header can be whatever you want to tell the users, or any information that you think is useful for your project, or this part, or whatever you want to use, you can use it like this. So just whenever you hover around it, you can just see we have, this is a React framework, and this is the content that we have. I think very easy and very, very simple. So the trigger is the title of the card, and the hover card content is the actual content of the card. And when you're importing it, you're just importing the hover card, the content, and its trigger. Great. Let us look at another component. We go back to shadcNUI, and maybe I'll select one more component. Great. Another component that you're going to look at is the toast. Let us have a quick look on how it works. For example, I can just click here. This is the example that we've been provided with. I'll just click here, add calendar, and you can see we have this toast here, scheduled, catch up, and whatever. Okay, great. And you can cancel the toast. So how do we implement this? We're going to implement this using add toasts and the button. The button we did already install. Therefore, we're just going to install this. I'm going to copy this, go back to my terminal, and then I'm going to install. Great, it has installed successfully. And you can check here, we have toast and toaster. Let us look at how we are going to implement this. So we need to copy this. We need to go to our app layout.tsx and then can copy this line. So I'm going to select this line and then I'm going inside my layout. So why do we copy it inside the layout? So that it can be available in all the children or in all the pages. Great, you can just come here on top, then import it. You've imported toaster from components UI toaster. Great, it's components UI, then toaster here. Let us see the next step. Then we need to wrap our children with toaster, or we just need to provide it inside the body. So you can just copy this line only of code, and then below the children or below the main, you're going to copy it. So I'll come here below the body, this one, the main here, or just below the children here. You can just copy it. Great. So it's going to wrap, it's going to be actually below the body. Or let us have a quick look at it again. We have the body, great, main, children. Yeah, it's after the children, which is correct. So usage, let us look at how we use it. So to use it says the useToast hook returns a toast function that you can use to display a toast. We're going just to copy this. We need to use it in our home page. So I'll come here inside page.tsx. Okay, then I'll just import it at the top here. I'm importing useToast. Great. Then you can come here. So we need to use a button. So we need to import button. We can have a look on how we did import button. We used to import button like this. So you can import button, go back to our code. We need to import it at the top here. Great. Let us see again, what else do we need? And we need to declare toast. We need to declare it just inside our functions. So I'll come here above the return here and declare toast. So we are declaring this toast, or we are destructuring it from use toast. Let us see the next step. The next step, we can call button, and inside the button we can just call the toast function. So I'll copy this, then come here inside. So I'll just copy it inside this div and then paste it here. Okay, great, and you can test our function. Great, let us test it. When I click here, this is the show toast. Let me just click here, and we have this message here on the bottom, right bottom. You have your message sent. This is just exactly as we expect. You can come here, and this is the description of the toast. So the main reason that we actually added toast in the layout so that it can be available in all our pages. So when you're having a big project, you're going to have different pages or different routes, and this is the best practice to ensure that it is available everywhere. Great. Let us have a look at another component and see how to use it. So for clarity, let me just zoom this, and we can see it clearly. So when I click it here, we have this notification. Okay, to make things more clear, let me reduce this one to a bare minimum. Just come here to our page.tsx to avoid being cluttered. We have a lot of code here, so I'll just reduce this, and then I'm going to delete everything. This is just clean up, so that when you're learning another component, it becomes easier. We're not going to use toast, so I'm going to delete it. Okay, and maybe also delete the import. And the trigger button, we're not going to use it, so you can delete that too. Let us leave the button here. Maybe you're going to use it in the next component. Let's look at another component that we can use in our code and see how we can actually implement it. The next component is the tooltip. What if you want to notify someone, or you want to notify your users what a button does? For example, when I move around this button, you can see this button adds to library. So you can have different buttons, and then you can use this hover tip or this tooltip. Let us see how it's done. Okay, the steps are pretty similar. You can just come here and we're going to add this tooltip here. So against to install it, I'll just come inside the terminal and install it. Okay, great. Then I'm going to install it. Then I'm going to press enter. As it installed, let us look at the next step. We need to import tooltip, the content, the provider, and the trigger. Great. Therefore, what is the tool trigger? Tool trigger is the name that we provide. So for example, here is, you can say add to cart, and then the description, what does add to cart do, will be on the tooltip content. Great. Let us go back and I'm going to copy this part for the import so that we can save time. Then go back inside our code, and we can see we have tooltip. It has installed here inside the UI. Can go inside page.tsx and then just import this. I'm going to import here on top. Great. Therefore, we're importing the tooltip content, and provider, and the trigger. A great job. Let's go and look at the next step. The next step, you need to call the provider, or you can just copy this code here, and then you can come here below this part. Then you can modify it. For example, just as I had said, the action can be add to cart. Great. So what does add to cart do? It adds items to cart for shopping. Okay, we can just do that and then save and see. Let's go back to our browser and see the effect. Great. Now, this is a tooltip. It's so easy. I love shadcn. It's so easy to implement and it saves a lot of time. Let me just zoom it a bit. Okay, when I hover around here, or when I click here, we're going to see that tooltip. Okay, great. And that is how we actually use the tooltip. It's very important when you just click on it or you just hover around it. Great. Let us see. Yeah, you can see it. It's add items to cart for shopping. Let us also look at another component that you can see and also maybe use in our documentation. I hope you've seen how easy it is. And even the documentation itself tell you just need to, you can even copy paste. It has allowed me to do so. You can copy paste so that it can become easier for you to do. But the key thing is to understand how it works. First thing, you just know, you install whatever you need and then you import it from the components and then you can just call it. Great job. Let us look at another component. Let us look at the drop down menu. Maybe you're going to use this in your project and I'm just going to show you quickly how we can use it. Okay, great. We can see that the documentation tells us, okay, we can just click this on here, or you can copy this on here and you're going to install drop down menu. I'll just come back as always in the terminal and then install. The next step we need to do is import it. You can import this one. So we need to import the drop down menu, the content, the menu item, the menu label, the menu separator, and the trigger from components UI drop down menu. Okay, great. Let us copy this and go back to our code. And then we can import it here just on top. Great. You can also notice that the drop down menu has been added inside the components UI and the drop down menu. Great. Let us delete this tooltip because we no longer need it. And the reason I'm deleting is just to make it more clear, to avoid having all these examples just in one page. Okay, great. And okay, maybe I'll just leave the button. I don't know whether we're going to use it, but let us go and see the next step. The next step was just copy this part for the import. Great, and I'll come here on top and then I'll paste it here. Let us see the next step, and then you can just copy this drop down menu. You can copy this inside your body. I'll come here inside the body or inside the return function, and you can just paste it here. Then click Ctrl S, and then we can go back to our program and see it. Great. Now when I click open, allow me to zoom a bit so that it can be clear on your side, or more visible. Okay, when I click open, we can see we have a drop down menu. We have profile, billing, team, subscription. I think this information is gold if you can just apply it. The drop down menus are essential and very important. It's actually, you cannot escape this. Whenever you're working on any project, you can never escape the part of menu. So it has actually enabled us. So when you open here, you can change all this. So how do you change this information? You can just come here, and this is the information you can change according to whatever you want. For example, instead of open, I can just say more, or rather I can just even call it menu items. And then this can be account, profile, billing, and team. Okay, just great. Let me just change only that. And you can see these are the menu items. So when you click it, you can see it. So you can give it a name that makes sense to you. And that's how easy you can use. I think this tool is so important that you have to use it. And like other libraries like Material UI, when you install, you are shipping everything inside your project. But for shadcNUI, you only install what you use. That is very important since it actually improves your speed of your browser. Let us look at another component that we can learn and see how to use it. Great. The next component that you're going to look at is the dialog. Let us just have a quick preview. We have an example here. For example, when you click this button, edit profile, when you click it, you're going to have this pop over here with some information, and then you can just click save changes. You can just cancel. Let's look at another example here below. You can just click share, and then we have this information here. I think this one is implemented in most advanced websites. Even in YouTube itself, you can actually see this. Okay, great. Let us see how it's implemented. How do we implement this? The same thing, the same process. You install what you need, you import it, then you just use it. Great. Let us install it. I'm going to copy this, go back to the terminal, and just then install it. Meanwhile, I'll clean the home page so that we can have only what we need to avoid, or just to make it clean. I'm going to remove everything and just remain with the title. To verify it as installed correctly, you can just look inside your components UI, and you should be able to see dialog.tsx. If you're not seeing this, that means it is not installed. Okay, great. This time I'm also removing the button because I don't think we are using it. Great job. Let us look at the next step. After installing it, you just need to import it wherever we want to use. So I'm going to import it in my homepage. That is where I want to use it. And it doesn't matter which path you're using it, because the path will still remain to be inside the components. Great. I'm going to copy it, and then just come inside the components, inside page.tsx, then import it up on the top. Great. Let us have a look on the next step. We need to call dialog, and the trigger, whatever is going to trigger the dialog, is this text open, and then dialog title. What is the title? You can say, are you absolutely sure to do this? Great. And then we can provide the description, just that. Great. Then you can just copy this, and then you can use it inside our home page. Great. We can save and just go back inside the browser and see the changes. Great. When you click open here, or you can just click open, we have this pop over here. Are you absolutely sure this action cannot be done? So this is just dummy data or dummy information. You can change it to suit your application. You can also change the title to suit whatever application you're talking about or whatever instead you're talking about. And I think this is also very important when someone does this, especially if it is something that is going to change absolutely everything, or is going to make a major change in the application concerning the user. You can use this popover. Great. And then a user can also cancel. Great. Let us see on another component that you can see we can use, or another component that we can learn from. We'll go back inside the shadcNUI components and check for another component. Great. Another one that is similar to what we have just talked about is the drawer. Let us have a look on the example page. For instance, when you click here, open drawer, we have this, and you can just click cancel. Let us look on also another example. We can click here, edit profile, and we have this pop over. I think you can implement this in your login page or registration page, especially when you're editing a profile. When you click here, you can just click save changes and it's going to save the changes. Great. Let us see how we're going to implement this, or how it is implemented. So the steps are similar. I think the steps for all these components are just similar. You install what you want, then you import it in the page that you're going to use, and then you just call whatever you call it. Great. Let us just do that. I'm going to copy this, npx shadcn at latest, and you're going to add the drawer. Great. I'm going to click on it, then inside the terminal, I'm just going to paste it and install it. After installation, we can look at the next step just inside the documentation. Always use the documentation. It's like your Bible or your Quran. Great. We can install this part. After installation, you can just import this. So I'm going to copy this importation. I'm going to use it inside my home page. So inside page.tsx, I'm going to import it. And I'm going to also delete this. And I'm going to delete this part of the dialog. Great. And then you can just go back. So this is the drawer. After importing the drawer and the content description and everything that is required, you can just copy the next part, and then you can use it inside our application. So I'll come here and then paste it here. Great. And I think we have some red line here. That means we need to import the button. Okay, I shouldn't have deleted it. Let us import it. You can just import button. We're importing button from @/ great. You need to import button, and we have suggestions here. So we need to select this one that is coming from components UI button. Ensure you select this one. Great. And that should fix everything. Then you can just save, and then you can go back to our browser. After importing the button, we have fixed the error, and therefore you can just click here, open. Great. And we have this button. Let me just decrease it to 100%. Yeah, we have this drawer here. This is the drawer that we have. So you can click submit or cancel. So are you absolutely sure? So what shadcNUI does is ensures it gives you some building blocks so that you can customize it according to your application. So you can mess around with this data, or you can play around with this data. For example, instead of open, you can provide a different value depending on your application. And then the title, can give it a title, and also the description, can give it a description. And you can see we have integrated the button for submitting, and also another button for closing, which is a cancel. Great. And what you can do with a button is, if you have noticed, this button is just the same one that we have for shadcNUI here. So you can also play with the variants. For example, instead of outline, you can also play with another variant that was, okay, great, destructive. And this, when we change to destructive, let us see what happens. You can go back and just click here, and you can see the pattern has changed to red. Great. And that's how you can play around with this. We had talked about the patterns and the variants, so it shouldn't be a problem to you. Great. Let us look at another example that we can look, or we can tackle in this next shadcn and also this project at large. I have found something amazing, and this one is the tabs. Okay, let us see what it does. For example, you can navigate between the account section and the password section. Great. And you can even enter some data here. So this is the tabs. This is how tabs work. And they can be really, really helpful, especially when you're dealing with a large scale application. Let us just look on how it is used. And you can even guess this process is just the same. We are installing what we need, which is the tabs, and then we import it, and then we use it. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to install it, copy this, then go directly to the terminal, and then paste it here, and then install it. And then you can go back. The next thing is just to import this. So importing the tab, the content, the list, and the trigger. Great. You can just copy that part and then go back to your application, and you can import it at the top. Meanwhile, I'm going to clean up all this drawer example so that it can have our program can become more clear. If you have installed correctly, then you should see inside your components folder and the UI folder, you should be able to see tabs.tsx, this one here. So if you're seeing this file, then that means you have installed correctly. The next step is just to copy the import. So copy this and then come here and import them at the top. I'll just import that. Great. Let us see the next step, which is the usage. I'm going to copy the usage, and then inside our program, I'm just going to paste this here. Okay, and we can just save and then have a look at the application. Great, and you can see we have account and password. So when I click password, let me zoom it out so that you can see. When I click password, you can see you can change your password here. When I click account, you can change your account here. And this is how you deal with tabs. You can have tabs in your application so that you can have more flexibility and also improve your user experience. And you can change with this variable. You can play around with these variables, and you can use your own. You can use a value that suits your application, or you can change it everything and provide even more functionality to it. You can also combine with other components. Great. Let us also have a look at another component library. The next component that we're going to look at is the slider. Sliders are very important in indicating the progress. Great. Let us see how to install it. We just need to copy this command here. And then I'm going to copy it and just install it. So I'll install it inside the terminal. And after installation, we need to import it inside our home page. So it does not matter. You can use it in any page that you want. This import is not going to change. It's just going to be like this, since the components folder is the one that is going to be there. Okay, great. I'm going to copy this, and then I'll go back inside my program here, and then I can install it. As always, if it has installed correctly, you should see slider.tsx around here. Great. Let us import it onto the top here. So we're importing slider from /components UI slider. Great. It is components UI, then slider. Let us see the usage. The usage is pretty simple. So you can just come here, the values. We can just copy this line, how we use it. So I'll just copy this line here. Then I can just put it at the end, just before closing the div. You can copy this. So what do we have? We have 3 variables. We have the default value, the maximum value, and the steps. So the steps means if you move the slider, it's going to change with how many steps. Let's say it's 2 steps, 1 step, or 5 steps. This will determine on your application. Let us have a look on it. So I can just come here inside the browser, and you can see. So I have not deleted this other part. That's why you have seen this. But you can see we have the slider, and you can change value, or it can change based on the user progress. And this is how you use it in your application. Finally, let us have a look on one more component in the shadcNUI and see how it's going to be used. We can go back inside our documentation, and then you can select one more. So you can come here and select the separator. So what is this? Why is the separator necessary? Separator is this thin line here that you see, or these thin vertical lines here. It could be vertical or horizontal. Great. Let us see how it's being used. And this one is so simple, but let us just see it. I'm going to copy it. You just install it, then import it, and then just use it. So simple and easy. So I'm going to copy it as, and then inside the terminal, I'm going to install it. Great. And after installing, you can see we have separator here. And okay, after installing, we can just import it here on top. So I'm going to type, okay, import, and this time we're importing slider. And you can see we have slider, but do not select this one slider from radix. You want to ensure that you select this one slider from @/components. Great. This one here, slider @/components UI. Yeah. Then the next step, we can just call the slider here. We have already imported, we can just call it. So you can just call the separator. Sorry, it's not slider. We are talking about the separator. Pardon me. So it's the separator, not slider. Separator. Okay, great. It is separator. We've already dealt with slider. Therefore, it's not slider, it's just separator. Now we are importing separator, and the next thing is we can just call it. I'm going to call it just below this H1 here. So I'm going to give it a space, and then I'm going to call the separator. So I can just do this and call the separator. You can see we have suggestion here, which is correct, and I can just accept. So we have the separator here. So if you're wondering what is giving me these suggestions, it's just an AI auto-completion tool. I think there are more than 2. We have many different auto-completion tools. You can just come here inside extensions, click extensions, then you can search for the following. One that you can search for is, you can actually search for tab 9, and you can install this one. Tab 9 is free. We also have autopilot. Not autopilot, but copilot. So you can also search for copilot, and you can install that one. So you can use any that you want. And you can install GitHub Copilot, but GitHub Copilot, I think it's not totally free. You can purchase, but I think you can use it on free tier. And the last one is Beto. Okay, great. We have Beto, this one here. So you can install this one here. So it will be useful for suggestions, and you can use it in your code. It can make your development journey easier. Great. Now let us test this one out, the separator. We have called it. Let us have a look in our application and see what happens. Great. You can see we have this line here, which is, I think this is so beautiful. You can even use this to separate your navbar, or you can use this one to show a separator for navbar. And this is the line for separator. Finally, let us have a look on the last item on our list that you can look. This is just an overview, and I think this tutorial should make you understand everything that you want to know about shadcNUI. It should give you a framework or steps on which you're going to implement. It does not matter which selection. The last part that we're going to look at, or the last component that you're going to look at, is the skeleton. And this one is very, very important, especially when you're loading something. It's very useful in database when you're loading something. So this one can be a fallback UI. If, let's say, your data is not fully loaded, then you can just show the skeleton. And I think it has been implemented in most of most of these advanced websites that you can see, or rather good or made websites that are made well. Great, you can see we can have this fallback UI. So this one is very, very, very important, and especially when you're dealing with application that loads lots of data, or let's say you are loading user data, you can use this as a fallback UI. Instead of just showing loading ... you can just use this one. Great, let us see how we're going to use it. Okay, and you can see the explanation is just the same. It is used as a placeholder while content is loading. Great, let us go back and see. We need to install it and then import it, and then we can define the shape of our skeleton. Let us see it in action. So I'm going to copy this, then go back inside my terminal, then paste it, and then install it. Then I'm going back, then we need to import. Therefore, I'm going just to copy this line for the importation, and then I'm going to use it inside my home page. And as usual, if you have installed correctly, you should see skeleton.tsx. Great, then you can just import it here on top. We have import skeleton from @components UI skeleton. So a skeleton can have various shapes, but let us just use this example that has been given. You can just copy this and see what we're going to have. So I'm going to put it just below the separator. So you can just do the same. Great, you can save, and then you can go back to our project and we can see. Great, we can see this is the shape of it. So I think I should delete the rest of the application so that you can only have this, but immediately below this line of the separator, this is the shape of the skeleton. But I think there's also another example in the documentation that can show this more clearly. So I'll just go back inside the shadcNUI documentation, and you can look on another example, or rather another example that is provided. So we have this example, and you can also check the code. Great. And you can see this one has a different shape for the skeleton. Great. You can just copy this part, or the div, this part only, and then you're going to, since we have already imported this the skeleton, you can just copy that part. Then you can come here, and inside this skeleton we can just copy that and hit Ctrl S. Great. Then you can go back inside our application, and I think with that we can wrap up our application. It has been a beautiful journey with you, and if you like this content, you can like it and also subscribe, and see you in the next one.